Jude, the brother of James, was commonly called Thaddeus. He was crucified at Edessa, 72 A.D.
Jude's a pretty to the point guy, huh?
He just got it done. He's like, I know what I want to say.
I mean, in his epistle, like even in his death, what was written about him, real short.
It's to the point.
Real simple.
They're like, he was alive, he had a brother, and then he died.
Yeah. Very unlike us.
Yeah. You know, I don't know about you. Let me ask you, what's your favorite chapter of Jude? I think for me, it's got to be the first chapter.
Yeah, definitely especially towards the end of chapter 1.
Yeah.
I really like how it concludes.
I love how the people that know are like, huh.
Yeah.
And the people that don't know are like, how does it end? And they're going to go and realize there's...
But the funniest thing is that even the people that know are now questioning themselves.
That's
like,
true.
wait, what? Yeah.
But you know what's funny? It's actually like triple layered too.
In what way?
Because there's a piece toward the end of Jude that we actually do like a lot.
Yeah, Jude is one of those anomalies. Yeah.
There's actually a lot of layers to it. You just...
I know. I know.
Good.
And to be honest, I didn't even think about that.
That's awesome.
I was just being like cheeky.
Yeah.
You know?
And it worked out.
It did. I'm glad. I like when it works out. So like one of the things I was thinking, speaking of the ending of Jude.
Yeah.
So I think that I had this thought the other day and I thought it was really funny. And this might be a little heavy for this part of the podcast. Welcome to Martyr's Row, by the way.
Welcome back.
Yeah, but my thought was there is like, Paul says we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, right? So that means that, and the Bible paints this picture all the way through, that there's this other side, there's this unseen space, there's this unseen realm, to use that phrase.
You're giving them no space to breathe.
And in that unseen realm, it's almost like what we do here is not affecting there, but instead what's happening there is affecting here. That like how we exist is more of a byproduct of the spiritual space, even though we can influence it the other way. So like,
yeah, that's interesting.
Both things are happening at once. What I mean by that is there's this interplay between both spaces that are just as critical to each side.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is they can see us, but we can't see them.
Yes.
So it's like one side of glass.
Part. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's the weirdest part, because to them, and by them I mean every other spiritual entity and being and life creation under God's kingdom and all that he has created, it all exists actively with a lot of awareness of what the Lord is doing. Not full awareness, but a lot of awareness. But however, we on earth were created for a very specific purpose.
Yeah, true.
In a very simple way, that really we're just supposed to focus on the earth.
Yes.
On the ground. You know? Like quite literally, we're just supposed to focus on the ground.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when you say that, because I think that's where why we run into all the issues we run into today, is because we tried to take, I mean, in the beginning of it, as far as like us taking accountability for the fall of the earth and the fall of man.
Sure, yeah.
We definitely did that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's on us.
Oh, yeah, it's like we invited this thing and we gave authority to this thing that wasn't supposed to have authority.
Right.
And then it continued to fall into more and more. And then we had some extra influence.
That's true.
And it's like there's a lot of things at play,
and that's
that wasn't supposed to be there.
And that influence is why we weren't supposed to.
Yes.
Because of what that influence could do to us.
Because we gave authority to something that wasn't supposed to have authority on the earth.
Yeah, it's like me telling my kid, hey, don't go play with that kid over there.
Yeah.
He's going to lead you down a path that's not good. Or potentially that, yeah, maybe it's fine, but like, But my point in all of that,
Yeah.
to frame that, is I think it's kind of funny that through the centuries, we on Earth have been trying to navigate and categorize the unseen realm.
Mm.
All the while, they all know how they work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't.
We don't get it.
But they can see us
Yeah.
organizing their world.
True.
So
Well, it's so funny when you say this. And
this is the most me question I could.
It's so good. Well, it's funny. This is where
It's not even a question. It's
my
just a
brain
thought.
goes, and I'm definitely jumping ahead in this
Okay.
to bring this in so early because it can cause a lot more questions. But it's like, I'll start with this. It makes me laugh. Back in 2020 when that all happened,
Yeah.
and like the way the future is looking, I was like, how is it that of all the apocalyptic sci-fi writing, all this and that, Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone got it the closest. And what's funny about that is now when we with how we look at the spiritual realm and how the Bible paints it,
Yeah.
it's like, how is it that Stranger Things got it the best
I know.
with how their reality works with the upside down?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's it. Like it's not
Yeah.
perfect, but it's like that's actually a pretty good image of what happens here, where they can't see the upside down world,
Yeah.
but the upside down can interact with them and influence them and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's in this ethereal version of
without breaking the plane.
yeah.
And that's that's where you have the whole concept of like chicken before the egg, or life imitating art.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And in reality, I think really what we learn from the Bible is that art is influenced by another realm.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's not really a way to flip that.
That's what we were just talking about a few episodes ago
Yeah.
with Ezekiel
Right.
and the Prince of Tyre and the King of Tyre.
Yes.
It's like that's what it is.
Yeah.
You have this human person that has this influence from something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're both very real,
Yes,
but one of them is very aware of their influence on the other.
absolutely.
The other one, the human version,
Yeah,
is kind of aware because they're surrendering their life to
Yeah.
that entity,
yeah,
but they're not getting a whole lot in return. in the sense that like they're not just like hanging out with a buddy, or like it's not like all of a sudden they can see everything.
yeah.
So like, yeah, but the funny thought that I was having is like, I was just thinking like, we spend all this time, and in some ways this whole podcast is in the tradition of this, is like trying to organize and categorize the unseen realm.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we are literally, like, as Paul says, looking in a mirror dimly.
Mm.
We're just kind of a bunch of like blind leading the blind.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a way that's like, but the funniest thing to me is that right on the other side of the veil, they can see us doing it, and they're like, "Dude, that's not right at all.
That's not even close.
That's not even close. I'm right here. I'm looking around like these guys are. What are these guys doing?
Like, yeah. Well, I think that's funny. It's like even that idea, and I think it's a beautiful idea, which is the chaos to order.
Yeah.
From chaos to order, and it's like what we're doing now. What we're trying to do is let's parse through what is chaos.
Yeah.
And let's try to make it orderly.
That's true.
And that's part of why we're doing this podcast, why we have these conversations. It's
Yeah.
like, here's all these chaotic thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
Let's try to organize them and fit them into this world.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like in some ways our brains are scrambled.
Absolutely.
Like it's like that Men in Black thing. It's like our brains are just like wiped. And so we have to figure out like how the kingdom of God works
Yeah.
again.
And it's sad we have to bring up Hollywood like 3 times to talk.
Well, and that is the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
So stay tuned till the very end of the podcast,
There's a little teaser.
because there might be something coming that you haven't seen yet.
If we actually get to it this time.
Hey, the viewer now is in the unseen realm. We are in the seen realm.
Oh.
I don't think there's a better way to conclude this segment.
It's perfect.
3, 2, 1.
Your name was Jude. brother was James. You gave your life in the name of our Lord, who died for us and our sin. But you wrote about how he lived and he died, but he rose again. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da.
Welcome to the writing corner.
Welcome.
I like that.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
It's very different than we've done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially since my back's turned to you.
Yeah.
That's also different. But, yeah, I really like it.
Also, it's fun that it's actually like our second time ever playing it together, too.
Yeah.
So, like, we just heard it.
Yeah, so Paul came in with this one.
Yeah.
The drums were already set up because we're in a studio, and that happens. And we just decided to run with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think maybe we give it one more shot.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
And how about do that like instrumental the refrain section, and then go back to the verse.
This part,
Yeah, the
part?
singing, yeah. Because
okay.
your little refrain is the same progression as the verse, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, so just go back into the verse.
Oh, okay.
To hear it again, and then play it out one more time. Like, kind of loop the whole thing again.
Oh, I can do that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do that, like, little refrain, and then go back to the top of the song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. I hope you like this.
Yeah, me too.
If you...
I feel like it's like some bedroom, like...
Yeah.
Chill hop.
Yeah. You're, got blankets on the drums. Real classic vibe. I like it.
It's nice.
It's the most...
It's real nice.
Also, we have headphones on, which feels great.
It actually does. It's funny how it makes us talk softer.
I know. So we can actually hear ourselves.
It's kind of cool.
You ready for it?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, let's try it one more time.
Cool. Your name was Jude. Your brother was James. You gave your life in the name of our Lord, who died for us and our sin. But you wrote about how he lived and he died, but he rose again. Your name was Jude. Your brother was James. And you gave your life of our Lord, who died for us and our sin. But you wrote about how he lived and he died, but he rose again. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da.
Welcome back.
Oh yeah.
This feels like a transformation.
It's actually funny because usually we're in the same spot and stuff just appears and disappears.
Oh, that's true.
But this one, the whole shot actually switches.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm interested to see how the snaps go.
We'll see.
Like you snap over here and suddenly
yeah, and then I'm right here. Oh yeah, that's gonna be.
It might
weird.
actually work out.
Maybe the whole songwriting bit, you can just flip the whole thing upside down. So not only are we in the wrong place, we're also upside down.
That would be kind of fun.
The vibe of the song feels like you could also add some like little bit of like
a haze.
rainbow.
Yeah.
Like what is that? Like polarized almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
I should.
You flip it upside down and make it like polarized.
It's like grainy film.
Yeah, and then in the spaces where we're talking, just make it normal.
Okay.
And then when the music starts, do it again.
Cuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to just make the editing as complicated as I can for Paul.
To where I just go up to that, I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. No.
But instead, I'm gonna edit you like disappearing from the frame.
or you're gonna do something that's way more complicated.
That sounds like me.
And spend the whole time on
I'm like,
it.
what if I just blurred out his thumb? That should only take
3 weeks. 3 weeks go by. Where's Paul at?
So how's that edit going, Paul? It's still going.
But you cannot see your thumb.
Your thumb
just
is
like
gone.
What are you talking about? All right, Paul. Enough pandering.
Enough lollygagging.
Pandering's not the right word.
No.
Let me turn the snare off.
It sounds like we might get something.
I also like that no one can see what I just did.
They actually don't know the drums is still right there.
Yeah, I'm like almost sitting on the drum set.
It's called movie magic.
Here we are.
And here
We'll get into that later.
Again.
We'll get into that
Just
later.
Got the movies on my mind.
Yeah. Okay, so
yep.
Tonight, I actually have a question for you to ask me.
Oh, the layers.
Yeah, I guess this podcast, this particular one is very dual layered.
It is.
Triple layered.
Triple layered.
Yeah.
It's like a tiramisu.
Ooh. I don't know how I feel about tiramisu.
I'm not a huge fan, actually.
Yeah. I'm not either.
But I like that it's around.
It's just the idea of like lady fingers.
See, that's a whole other
topic. And then espresso that you're not drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't like the names of some of those dessert
That's what
foods.
I mean. Like, who decided lady fingers?
Yeah.
Like, did someone initially cut off a lady's finger?
Can I ask, if we have any UK listeners here, can you please explain...
That's right.
Like, your language? Like, why did you name the things that you named?
Can you explain all of the UK?
Yeah. They're like, oh, yeah, that's the diddly squad over there. That's a terrible accent. And it's like, what?
That was like an Amish Irish person.
Yeah, I want more Amish with it. Why? Can you pass me the diddly squats there? I grew up eating the stuff. That's what Oliver Twist.
Yeah, now it's like 1800s on a pirate ship. I like this. It's just evolving.
It's pretty good. But that was the thing that I always laughed at, because I actually took a couple courses over there one summer.
Over where?
In London.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, where are we at now?
Like, you've transported in time. And so it's funny, like, that was the thing I saw. I was like, I don't even know what this is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And like I don't know.
Anyway, that's a whole different...
Yeah, and to be honest, like, we love etymology and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where it's like, technically, it's our fault that we don't understand.
Yeah.
We're the ones that left.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's kind of on us.
Are we kind of like the Amish then, in that way?
I don't think anyone's like the
disconnected. Amish. Our language just stopped at a certain period of time.
Yeah, true. No, ours evolved.
And we just disconnected from them. That's all it was.
Actually, do
you know the reason that we call it soccer?
Yeah, we talked about this.
We have, okay. Yeah.
And like you were about to go into like a 30-minute conversation.
Okay, you need to stop me. All right, ask your thing.
I think that was a tipsy episode.
Oh, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to understand UK listeners, why we call it soccer. It's actually your fault.
You did this.
Go listen to Tipsy Theology.
It's the ultimate prank.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Because we have a tendency not to do that. We like hanging out, guys. That's why we made this podcast. Fun. So I have a question for you to ask me.
Okay, I'm ready.
Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I
so
read it?
It's right here.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of pocket tees.
I love that it's in the pocket tee. Here, wait. Let me hold this.
Do you have a pocket tee? Oh.
No, but I feel like I need to get a pocket tee now.
Do you need reading glasses?
I feel
I've
like never been a huge fan of pocket tees, but
yeah,
you're inspiring me to give it another go.
It's an extra layer of comfort.
Yeah, I feel like I've already told you why. How I feel
you
about
need to
them.
Balance it.
No, I just feel like someone's gonna just stick their hand.
Oh, that's right. That will happen.
Yeah, that's what
it doesn't happen much to me. I think because of your personality, people will do it to you.
Yeah, because people. One of my pet peeves, if you ever meet me, is when people
If you ever meet me.
If you ever meet me. When people like rest themselves on my shoulder.
Yeah.
I just don't like it.
Yeah. That's like a height thing, though.
That's what, and most of the time it's people that aren't that much taller than me.
It's making them feel taller.
That must be it.
The thing is, Paul, is I've definitely done that to you many times.
I actually don't remember you ever doing that to me.
That's good.
Yeah.
That means it didn't bother you.
Yeah. It might just be who does it.
That's always true. It doesn't matter what it is.
I feel like such a hypocrite right now.
So if you ever meet Paul, be a cool person, and then you can do whatever you want.
That's true. I'll probably let you get away with it. Because I do have double standards.
All right, I gave you the note, Paul.
I have a question for you from you.
Okay. For from. What? Okay.
So, Steven.
All ears, Paul.
Who is the real OG?
Do you mean Og?
You wrote it. It's your question.
I like how I made you look dumb while writing the question that you were going to ask me.
But I like you, so I let you get away with it.
So the question is, who is the real Og?
That's a good question. What's an Og?
That's not something I was prepared for. Because what is an Og? I believe an Og is something.
Is it actually?
I think so. If you're watching this or listening, in the comments below, tell us what an Og is. Actually, just go to Reddit, and whatever the Reddit thread is for Og, just drop it in. Unless it's what we're already talking about, then that might be pretty destructive. That might be a really bad idea. Yeah.
So maybe a better question.
Okay.
Who is Og?
So yeah, good question.
Thanks.
Who is Og? There you go. I asked a question to myself from you that was leading you to the question you needed to ask me.
But I still feel encouraged.
Yeah.
It's weird how that works. So many layers, guys.
I got the question wrong so you could get it right.
I love it.
But you asked it both times. Who are
Socrates would be so proud.
Socrates, known pagan.
Yeah.
So,
can that be a shirt? known pagan.
That actually would sell. That would do really well.
That's pretty good.
I think I would wear it.
I would probably
just because it would be fun to wear.
Known pagan.
Oh man,
we have to just write a note.
There's a decent amount of good
all the
shirt
t-shirt ideas that we've had in here.
Yeah, actually, if you're watching this, go in the comments and please write that. Give us a list. Email us a list.
Yeah.
Paul@martyrsrow.com.
It's a real email. I don't have access to it, but it exists.
I think you will by the time that they see this. Honestly, you may not. If not, then Steven@martyrsrow.com.
Which weirdly forwards to
Oh, yeah, I don't have access to it. So just write it in the comment.
Just email. We'll get to it when we can.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. You'll figure it out before we do.
Hopefully, In like 4 months when this comes out, we have access.
Yeah, true. So I mean that dates us a little bit.
Oh, that I probably shouldn't have said that. Now it's
Just bleep
sad.
it out. No, I'm just kidding. No one will know. Okay, so ask the question one more time. Your question, not my question to me from you.
Stephen Peter Howell.
I feel like Paul would have been better.
Yeah, I probably
Peter Paul Howell.
Peter Paul Howell.
Wait, it would have to be Stephen Peter Paul Howell.
Yeah, which is funny because I actually know your middle name, but I chose to give you a new one.
I prefer it.
Yeah. Who is Og?
Okay. You wanted to say the real.
I did.
Og.
It's like a Netflix doc now.
So, okay, so this is one of those questions that, like, I feel like we've done this throughout, but we haven't quite hit it on the nose, because one of the things that, like, one of the raw and simple forms of why this podcast exists in the first place is because it's because we want to be able to talk about and ask the questions that you would typically ask or want to ask in the hallway, in the back hallway of a church after service.
Yeah.
Or before service. And this is one of those questions for me. So this is one of those questions for me where I've been like, there seems like there's a bunch of things and people and stuff going on in the Bible that I'm like, huh? What is this? So Og is, oddly enough, I've never heard, and maybe it's just because I fell asleep or like wasn't listening. I don't think I've ever heard anybody, like I've never been sitting in a service on a Sunday or a Wednesday in my life in any place that I've been in and someone start talking about Og or even mention Og. Please tell me you have.
I feel like I've heard it like in passing.
I don't even think I've heard that.
As far as like they read the verse that mentioned him.
Okay.
But that was it.
But I feel like that's realistic.
Which is because I don't know if I'm giving anything away here, but I think there are about 80 references with his name throughout the books of the Bible.
22.
There's 22? I read 80. No, I think there's more.
No, I'm pretty sure there's 22.
Hold on, let me see.
Paul has a notepad tonight.
I do.
So we're about to get real scholarly.
I mean, I didn't write them all down.
Here's the thing.
Oh, yeah, 22 times.
Yes.
What's the 80 for?
I don't know.
I had that number in my head.
Well, when you say that, that reminds me of an earlier episode where somebody else is mentioned 80 times.
You're right.
Son of Man.
It's Son of Man. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes.
I just listened to that
I'm
episode.
so glad that we got there.
I just listened to that episode.
I'm so glad that we got there. So for the listener, we solved that puzzle for you.
Yeah.
Which you didn't care about at all. But anyways.
22 times. Yes.
Wait, why do you have a notepad about that if I asked you the question?
I don't know.
Mysteries.
I think you wrote this notepad.
We're really behind the scenes on this episode.
This is some backroom stuff going on.
It is. This is Welcome to the Bedroom episode. We shouldn't call it
Don't
that.
say that.
Okay. Well, we are talking about Og.
That's true.
There's so many layers.
Why do we like this?
You mean like so good at podcasting?
Yeah, we're really good. We don't even know how good the power we hold.
Oh, man. And the thing is no one cares.
No.
It's awesome.
They're just in the comments waiting.
We're just having so much fun.
Yeah.
I know. At the beginning of the episode, it's like, just sit there and answer all of our questions in the comments.
We have a lot.
So Og is interesting because, and it's literally OG.
Yeah.
Which is why the question was what it was. But Og is a very critical person that's mentioned 22 times in the Old Testament. And the interesting thing about that is, like, there's so many people that are mentioned way less than that have way more importance throughout Scripture. And it's, Jude being one of them.
Yeah.
Og is mentioned in the Bible more times than Jude.
Yeah, that's true.
It's got to be.
I think that's true.
Yeah, so Og, he's mentioned 22 times in the Bible. And there's a lot of critical pieces to this. Like, Og is actually a pretty critical, I would say that, and all right. So if you're listening and you're waiting in the comments, figure out how many times we say Og, because I feel like I'm going to use it as
We said it 80 times in the podcast.
yeah.
Will say
That's what it is. Yeah, but
it is kind of fun to say though.
I know, but it's like a resting point. So
Yeah.
Og. Oh, Og. So he
You stub your toe. Og.
it is kind of spelled that way.
Yeah.
No, so Og's mentioned 22 times in the Bible, and he's like the face of many different things. He represents a lot of things, and he's a critical person, particularly, and person might be a little loose, but
We'll get there.
but Og is like, he's kind of a figurehead in the story of Israel, and a critical piece, to be honest, to another question, which is a whole other, which we've talked about in an earlier episode actually, and I'm like trying to remember the earlier episodes, but talking about like the God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New Testament, like the idea of the cruelty of God in the Old Testament and actually shaping that, and Og is the perfect person to look at.
He kind of represents what all of that is.
Yeah, and why it's very different from nowadays a nation going against another nation and wiping it off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different thing. However, like, we should not be so naturalist, and we should still consider things being way more spiritual even today.
Absolutely.
In those type of circumstances. But we're not going to get into that. So let's talk about Og. So Og is one of those people that's like, it's so interesting to me because he shows up constantly through the Torah, and he's referenced a lot. In fact, he's referenced in the Psalms.
Yeah, I think there's 2 Psalms that mention him.
Yeah. So he's referenced in the Psalms in a way where he's like kind of the guy to look to.
Yeah.
It's like he was like in the way that Nimrod was like the first of the mighty men. Og is like the last of the mighty men.
Yeah. No, I mean, it actually says that.
I know. I didn't mean to get there that quick.
No, you're good.
But I also don't think I realized it in that way. But
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
Not until I just said it. So like, I guess Nimrod is the first and Og is the last. And we need to do a whole other later episode on the fact that Og technically isn't the last, even though he's called the last. And there's like a subgenre of what that means. Yeah,
and a lot of that has to do with because of the descendants.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, as far as like diluting the bloodline.
Yes.
That's a lot for people who don't know what I'm talking about.
That's a bomb. You just dropped.
So I think maybe if we're talking about Og, I think maybe one of the first places I want to go is probably not where you think.
Okay.
And the funny thing is like, this is not one of those like, hey, here's a question that you don't know I'm going to ask, but secretly you do. I think you actually don't know where I'm going to start.
I'm actually really excited because I feel like I try to put you in this place normally, and now I'm here, and it's really exciting.
And one of the things that's cool about this is that we actually talked about this either last episode or the episode before, but this passage, we spoke from this passage. So I'm going to start Genesis 15.
Ooh.
So Genesis 15.
I wasn't ready for this. This is good.
Starting in verse 12, it says, "As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abraham." We did talk about this because we used this as a reference of God making a covenant with Abraham.
Yes.
Because he doesn't make the covenant with Moses. He makes the covenant with Abraham.
Yeah.
And then Moses writes out the law according to the covenant God made with Abram.
Yes.
So this is basically the moment of sacrifice where God is making the covenant with Abram. It says, "As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So the reason why I started here,
I'm actually really glad you started here too.
yeah, because I was trying to find the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, obviously the beginning is before chapter 15, and we can get into that. But I feel like when we talk about Og specifically, I feel like this is a good starting point, because you kind of go like, all right, well, you never said Og.
Yeah.
Well, I did and I didn't. So the thing is like in this moment, what the Lord is saying to Abram is he's looking forward and he's saying, your people, the children of Israel, which is the son that you don't know you're going to have yet.
Yeah.
That son, the people, the multi-generations that are going to come from you, and that promise hasn't been given yet either. And in that, or it hasn't been fulfilled yet either. And so when your people are gathered together, they're going to be exiled to what we'll come to find out is Egypt. And then they end up in Egypt for 400 years. And then God puts an iniquity on those people and judges those people. And he judges them according to their gods.
Yeah.
And as he does that, he takes the children of Israel out of that land. And then he brings them, he says, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation. And back here means the place where Abram is at the point where the Lord is talking to him in Genesis 15.
Yeah.
So Abram is in the place where the children of Israel will eventually come back to. So he's seeing that ahead of time and he's letting him know. I mean, imagine.
What's interesting with that too is he knows like that's the place they're supposed to come back to, because we saw in Deuteronomy, or we will see in Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
Where he's like, this is my portion that I've taken for myself.
Yes. Yeah, and even calling back to an earlier time point in that passage.
Yeah.
So like it is that space where that land that Abram is in it's the promised land.
Yeah.
It's the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually in this we would call it the land of the Amorites.
Yes.
Because he says, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So there's an iniquity on the Amorites that are in the land that he's currently in, that when he leaves, or when they leave and they're exiled, they'll come back.
Yeah.
And the iniquity of the Amorites will at some point become complete.
Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things is like there are things in the Bible that we know about are prophecies that have not yet come. But the really cool thing about the Bible is that there's all these prophecies that you see fulfilled.
Yeah.
So you see all these things, and if you start to talk about prophecy in the Bible, like immediately the first thing you should think of really is Jesus. It's like look through the prophecies about the coming Savior, the one to save. But there's a bunch of other things that all support that, and they all point to and lead up to Jesus coming. Yeah. And they're all interlinked to that. But especially in Genesis, there's a lot of stuff in Genesis that's really setting up like kind of not need for a Savior, but the Lord's working something out a little bit ahead of time. And it's, I
think what's interesting about that passage for a couple of reasons. One, kind of a side point to this, but I think it's important to say the Amorites are descended from Canaan, who we've talked about in a previous episode with Noah's son Ham and Noah's wife.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, we can. But I think that's important to say is like, okay, so Canaan, who is the child from that issue, that misdeed. I was like trying to think of a word to use here.
Yeah.
From that situation. And it's like there was a curse that was placed on Canaan from Moses.
Yeah. And say from who?
Or sorry, not Moses, from Noah.
So Canaan's mom and dad is who?
Is Ham and Noah's wife.
which is his mom.
Which is his mom. Yeah, for those who weren't following.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little weird.
Yeah. So Canaan, yeah.
It's uncomfortable. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Kind of gross.
But also like not said plainly enough.
Yeah.
Often enough, maybe. I'm not sure how often we need to say it, but but it is a little bit like, oh yeah, that's one of those details. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so the flood happens, and Noah and his family are essentially to be fruitful and multiply in the same command as Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And so it's this kind of reset of creation.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like the way you said it on a previous episode where it's like we see this resubmerging into chaos so God can pull it back into order.
Yeah. Did I say that?
Yeah, it was really good.
I do really like that.
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, because and there's all this stuff with water. Ooh, we need to do Jonah. We were just messing around with that.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty obvious. I mean, the Bible is actually really
Write
obvious.
that down in the comments. We need your help.
Yeah. A future episode about Noah. No, Jonah. Well,
take note.
It's spelled almost the same. Let's not get too tangent on this one.
That could be a whole other topic.
Yeah. But so you have this post-flood, which, again, there's so many future episodes that we'll do pre-flood and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And some of this will actually point to that. But post-flood, you have Ham sees his father exposed.
Yeah.
But actually has a kid with his mom.
Yeah, and I think it's weird because in English, when we see it, it looks like he just walked in on his dad dropping his drawers, and it's like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
And when you look at the euphemism that's used there from an ancient Hebrew perspective, it's very clear what he's saying.
Plus later context of the child born.
Yeah, it seems to say.
Yeah.
Especially with how it's even written in the genealogies, it's set apart from the rest of his children.
Yes.
And I think what's so weird about this too, when we look at it, is like, so the people that went into the ark was Noah and his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think the throw just insult to injury here. It's like the guy already had his own wife.
Yeah. Yeah. That boat was a wild place.
Kind of messed up.
For sure.
Let me just go out on a limb here and say I think it's kind of weird. But so we see from that unholy union, the birth of this child, which Noah then places a curse upon, which we could even read into that further and say he's placing a curse on a nation because their children were the births of those nations, named after them.
Yeah.
And then that's when we see Nimrod, and then down the line to the Amorites. Yeah,
and Nimrod comes through that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have this, like, and we've talked about this before, but bloodlines are like kind of important, and not in like a, like, bloodline is like a weird. It feels like a weird thing. Like, it makes you like think of vampires and like all this stuff, or it makes me think of that. I don't know about you. I won't project that on you. But it's one of those things where, like, when you look at bloodlines, it's actually how the Bible is set up. It's genealogies. So, and what are genealogies? They're bloodlines. It's like DNA passing off from person to person to person. Yeah. So, like, what you have, and there's a lot of language of iniquity from generation to generation. Yeah. Curses, but then also blessing that can go 1,000 generations. It's like, when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, so there's this moment where after the flood, there's a situation that happens pretty quickly that is very reminiscent of pre-flood in a major way. And then Noah curses that instance in order to try and, like, hit it quick. Like, hey, we just came out of that. Yeah. Don't do that anymore. Right. And it's like, well, where did Ham get that idea? Well, he got it because he lived before the flood.
Yeah, he was in that generation.
Yeah. And the stuff before the flood we'll get to in another episode.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like it wasn't just in and of himself. It was learned behavior. It was things that he already understood.
Right.
It was like a worldview that it was almost like a sin he needed to still work out in his life. You know what I mean? Versus it being like a tormenting spirit coming upon him.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like,
I mean, even in another sense of it, it's even like a power struggle.
Yeah.
Of like his way of getting authority over his father was to shame him in that way. Yeah.
And in some ways try to reestablish what existed before the flood.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very reminiscent of even Peter telling Jesus he doesn't need to die.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan."
Right.
It's like that idea of like he's going, "Hey, maybe I can usurp my dad and go back to the days of Noah."
Yeah.
The pre-flood days.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'll just go in and do this, and some spiritual entity is like definitely happy about that, if not pushing into it.
Yeah.
But and not like in that moment, probably. But and then there's also the question of like spiritual ritual within what he was doing specifically.
Yeah.
So and that's a little bit of a future episode as well, probably. But
a lot of teases.
Yeah. But it really kind of gives the framework for this moment, because that Genesis 15 moment is really kind of it's a critical moment to go, okay, well, who are the Amorites? So we go back and we go, Amorites are descendants of Canaan. Canaan comes out of this unholy union that is reminiscent of the days before the flood. And the days before the flood, even going back to Genesis 6, which is kind of like the linchpin moment of why the flood has to come in the first place. Yeah. Which that's definitely another episode. But definitely. But even in that, you have this corruption where the human bloodline is tainted, and in that instance, all of a sudden you're carrying back to this. So now the human bloodline is tainted again post flood, and this iniquity is put on this nation that is now going to be has an iniquity on the nation itself that has to be set apart from all the other people. Yeah. It has to be pushed away and not a part of what's going on. And in the same way that everything pre-flood needed to be wiped out, eventually the iniquity of the Amorites has to be ended. Yeah. And the way it's ended is wiping them out.
And I think what's interesting with that too is even the way that it's worded makes me think, and this is me going off on a limb based on just the language that I see in Genesis 15.
Speculation alert.
Yes, But it's that idea of like, oh, so it's not yet complete. And I think even in there, it's like we get a glimpse into God dealing with other nations. Yeah. But we're not really told the details of what's even happening. Sure. And I think that's cool. One, because it's like God's working with all people at all times. Yeah. Individually. Yeah. Which I think is really cool. And we kind of get a glimpse into that happening here. Yeah. Where it's like that's in a lot of ways God is showing mercy to them by not judging them now. Yeah. For sure. Why did he do that? I don't know. Because even like he's like they're iniquity, so they have them. Like he's just to make a judgment. Yeah. But instead he's waiting. It's like, well, why is he waiting? Well, he says it's not complete yet, which means he's still giving them time. Yeah. Which in that way, it's like, in some ways, it could suggest some amount of redemption in some way. Right. It gets complicated because of what we're going to talk about. Yeah. Most likely. But it does ask that weird question of like, there is some amount of redemption that is potentially possible there, that he's allowing them time to do something. Right. But instead, that doesn't happen. Yeah. And it's the simple of that through line though is to kind of go like, hey, there's a corruption that caused this within humanity where all of it just needed to be wiped out and the righteous needed to be saved. Yeah. And then there was corruption again in the righteous family. Yeah. Echoing back to the same corruption that echoes back to the original corruption. Yeah. Genesis 3 back to Genesis 6.
Now we're at Genesis 15 talking about the Amorites because of what happened a couple of chapters before with Ham.
Yeah.
And you have it's the same thing happening in different ways.
It just repeats itself.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the same. It's like it's the ancient serpent that's trying to just dig itself back into humanity, and it's doing it the same way.
We fall for the same trap every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the way that we're most vulnerable. And to be honest, I think it's one of the reasons why you look at when Paul talks about sins, he talks about sexual sins in a very specific way, and he kind of sets aside and says it's because it's the sin that's actually against your body.
Yeah.
And that seemed in without full context of the scriptures, that kind of seems like it's a that kind of checking the camera.
I just wanted to make sure. I just got worried for some reason.
That's one of those things where it just reading Paul and not thinking about even what's happening in Genesis, like not looking at the whole picture, you kind of go like, oh yeah, I could see where that type of sin would be different. You're like, okay, except that like in the context of the scripture and the way that the ancient serpent, where the devil, where Satan has come in, almost every time it's through a sexual sin.
Yeah,
it's through something that is specifically a ritualistic sexual sin that goes against the body and corrupts human flesh in a way that disrupts bloodline and purity of bloodline, which disrupts the genealogy of the Savior who was to come and reset all of that.
And I think that's where we see that image especially demonstrated well with Joseph, where it's like when he's faced with a sexual sin, he flees from it.
Yeah.
And I think
he
that's
leaves his
like,
garment.
Yeah, and it's like that's the call. It's like we fall for this so often repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like just get out of there.
Right.
Don't even be there.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's something greater going on there. It's not just like it'll be okay. It's like, no,
I'll just deal with it.
No, actually, that's like the number one way through the scripture that man has fallen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happens over and over and over again. So you have the people of Canaan, and then you also have like the understanding of the Amorites. So who are the Amorites? We see that they're from the line of Canaan. We also know that where are they from? Like, where are they? And they're mostly in the Mesopotamian region.
Yeah.
And then there's another area. But they're mostly in Mesopotamia. And for Abram, that's very specific.
I mean, that's where he is.
Right. Yeah. So like for him, it's like, okay, he knows the Amorites because he lived among them. He lived on the outside of, like, he was separate from them, but that's the culture that he understood and grew up in.
Well, I mean, there was even a time when it's like he probably worshipped those gods to some extent.
Yeah, or at least his parents did.
His family did. Cause it's like a lot of the stories and legends, like he would have known and read all of those things.
Well, that's the big thing. And that's something that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Is like his context and worldview. He would have been very aware of the deeds and the traditions of the Amorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would have, those would have been his movies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's his pop culture.
Yeah, that is his pop culture.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So that's kind of a little bit of the back end context. So what I want to do then is let's just jump to if the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet been concluded, or it has not yet, how does he say it? It is not yet complete. Then let's see if we can find where it's complete.
Ooh.
So honestly, Deuteronomy, if you haven't read it in a while, there's a lot there that like we probably just need to spend more time in Deuteronomy.
Honestly, the first 5 books, the Torah,
it's wild.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And it's all it's all interconnected.
Like I've spent so much time in Genesis.
I know.
And then now I'm like finding myself in Deuteronomy. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
There's still 3 more after this?
Yeah. Yeah. There are, Paul.
Yeah. Well, there's
actually,
more books than just that. But
there's 3 more ahead of it in
yeah.
between it and Genesis.
Yes.
Because Deuteronomy is the last book of the Torah.
That's correct. Yeah, you're right. I love how I'm like, wait, I did that completely backwards.
Which in some ways is probably important. That like you kind of have this like wrap up of in Deuteronomy, there's a lot of supernatural worldview.
Yeah.
And it's really creating the framework for the context of the world that they live in.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's kind of wrapping up the Torah in a way that's like, here's your framework for life. You know, like you have your origins, and then you have your rules and your ways to live in the practice of it. So you have the why and the what, and then now you have the environment that you live in and how to function in that.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of how the Torah is set up in that way. You know, the reporter's questions: who, what, when, where, why.
I think we got you.
Yeah. So like this is okay. So there's a bunch of places we could start, but let's go to who is Og?
Who is Og? Who was? Let me ask.
Who was? Who is? All right. So I'm just gonna jump straight to here. Og. Nope. Deuteronomy 3. It's like a tick now. Og chapter 3. Deuteronomy chapter 3. Starting in verse 1, it says, "Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan," or Bashan, however you want to say it. I like Bashan.
I think I say one similar. Bashan, I think is how I say it.
Bashan.
What? How do you say it?
Bashan.
I like that. Bashan. Bashan.
I feel like I know a Bashan.
I'm gonna let that
one. No comments below on that one.
No. We're gonna bleep that out.
So leading up to this is like the chapter before this. We're talking about essentially the children of Israel have this is what is happening in Deuteronomy chapters 1 and 2 is that the children of Israel are coming out of Egypt, and they're coming up, and they're making their way up to the land of Canaan. This is before the 40 years. So they're making their way up to the land of Canaan. And as they're making their way up to the land of Canaan, there are these groups of people that the Lord tells them those people essentially need to be wiped out or eliminated in order for the children of Israel to make their way back to the land of Abraham, back to the land that's designated for him. But they're not just on a conquest, just wiping out and just painting the town red. Like, they're not doing that. Yeah. What they're doing is they are going back and they're bringing judgment upon the Amorites. The iniquity that needs to be completed because of the sins of Ham going all the way back.
Yeah.
And the iniquity and what was put on him by Noah. So what the children of Israel are doing essentially is fulfilling that judgment that God that Noah places on Ham and the descendant of Ham through Canaan and that line of people that include Nimrod and go all the way through. This is essentially what's happening. So then we turned and we went up the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to the battle of it. I'm going to say all these names different than everybody's. Idri.
Put that Florida on.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing all of the letters long. But the Lord said to me, "Do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land into your hand, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon." So the Lord our God gave into our hand Og also, the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we struck him down until he had no survivor left. And we took all his cities at the time. There was not a city that we did not take from them. That kind of sounds like Trump.
Frankly, there's no city.
There's no city that we did not take from them.
Great cities, beautiful cities.
We took them all.
Lots of walls.
We took all their walls. They did not hurt us. 60 cities, the whole region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these were cities fortified with high walls.
I knew it was coming.
Gates and bars, besides very many unwalled villages. There were very many unwalled villages.
We sent in the dogs, beautiful dogs.
And we devoted them to destruction, as we did to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, devoting to destruction every city, men, women, and children. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as our plunder. So we took the land at that time out of the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, from the valley of the Arnon to Mount Hermon. Arnon to Mount Hermon. Again, another word we can say however we want.
True.
The Sidonians call Hermon Siron, while the Amorites call it Sinir. All the cities of that was an aside, all of the cities of the tableland, and all Gilead and all Bashan, as far as Silica and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. What?
There's a lot that's said in there. I think.
What?
Starting from the top. What?
I was going to stop there because I was about to dig
though.
into another part that I want to get into and probably will end with.
Yeah, I think that's cool. But I think it's interesting on one hand where Og and Sihon are normally put together in often.
Yes.
Og is talked about more so, but you'll typically see the 2 names together. And Sihon, which is interesting about him, is because he defeated the Moabites king.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, these guys ruled a lot, is basically what
Yeah.
what it's trying to outline for us. Like, they kind of took over a lot of territory.
Yeah.
And they were extremely powerful.
Yeah. Well, so Psalm 136 says, to him who struck down great kings, for his steadfast love endures forever, and killed mighty kings, for his steadfast love endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his steadfast love endures forever. And Og, king of Bashan, for his steadfast love endures forever, and gave their land as a heritage, for his steadfast love endures forever. A heritage to Israel, his servant, for his steadfast love endures forever. So you have this psalm.
Which is fun. I don't remember that in the worship song.
I know.
They don't talk about Og in there.
I know. And he killed Og of Bashan.
Our God and King. He killed
And his
Og.
love endures forever. Yeah, so talking about like not hearing it in a sermon, I've never heard it in a song either.
Yeah.
I think we need to write that song. Maybe that's what we need to do.
That's a Martyr's Row song.
That's what we need to do. We need to find all the giant kings in the Old Testament.
Yes.
That's another little thing to pop in there. But yeah, so it's interesting because you even have the psalmist in Psalm 136 mentioning both Sihon and Og as these specific Amorite kings, and you kind of go like if you've read that before in the Psalms, and you go, okay, cool, like yeah, it just some kings, not just some kings.
Yeah,
2 major kings of massive regions that are in the Middle East that were specific gateways to get into Israel.
Yeah.
So like this had to happen, but it was also to finish the judgment upon Canaan that came through Ham by Noah. And you have this, and all of that needed to happen because it was the sin that had happened that caused the flood in the first place, happening again through the line of Ham and through the line of Canaan. Yeah. And that needed to be wiped out again. But the Lord said that he would not flood the earth again. So he had to figure out a way to judge these people that are from that line without wiping out the whole earth. Yeah. So he uses the children of Israel in order to enact judgment on those remnant that are still there from the line of Canaan back to Ham. And that's why those people have to be wiped out. Because the thing is, like, I think we question a lot, why are the children of Israel going through and wiping out every like man, woman, and child? And you go in there, that's hard to say.
It is.
Like acknowledging that's a hard thing to say. But for some reason we're okay with the flood. Like for some reason we're okay with like, the flood, they were doing terrible things, they needed to be wiped out. But go and kill the men, women, and children, it's not any different.
Yeah.
It's the judgment of
Yeah.
God, but I think because it came through water and not people in war,
Yeah. I think it has
somehow it
different kind
seems
of,
worse.
because I guess on one hand, if you deny God, you can say it's a natural disaster that was unfortunate.
Right.
But on the other one, you can, at the worst case, you have to say it was people that made a decision and blamed God for it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, like you said, it is interesting because it is judgment, but it's two different forms of it.
Right.
And one definitely seems harsher.
For sure. Yeah, and okay, so getting to
Yeah.
like who Og is and these important pieces about him. So going back to Deuteronomy.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially with everything that we've brought up so far. It's like, all right, there's a lot that happened in here, and understanding like who the Amorites were is really important to know. Basically, why is this okay?
Right.
I couldn't think of a better way to say that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the question that is really difficult for us to answer a lot of times from a naturalistic worldview.
Sure. Yeah, and there's something spiritual going on here. There's a judgment taking place.
Yeah.
Because, over and over again, we must be holy as the Lord is holy.
Mm-hmm.
And how does
Yeah.
holiness comes through by fire, the shedding off of every unnecessary thing. And so it's the naturalism and everything that has come in modernism or modernity, like through that whole process, we kind of get this piece where we can pick and choose the pieces that we want to keep on, not realizing that we're standing in a fire. And it's like, we can't keep that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we try to hold on to it, we're going to be completely destroyed in the fire.
Yeah.
Instead of being refined in it because we're letting it go.
Absolutely. Because I think this is an important, I think an aside, but I think it's important when we look at sin versus God or evil versus good.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those where I think it's easy for us to look at as God as like, oh, he can't be in the presence of evil.
Right.
But it's actually the reverse.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that goes to the fire. It's just like, no, evil can't exist in the presence of God.
Yes.
And I think we see examples of that when we look at the practice of like the Holy of Holies.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, well, why do they have to tie a rope to this guy with bells on it?
Yeah.
Because when he went into the presence of God, if he had not prepared himself well, then he died.
Yes.
And that's not because, God's too afraid of me. But it's like, no, it's because sin can't exist in the presence of God. It's evaporated.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important when we look at even the severity of sin. When God says, be holy, when Jesus says, be holy as I am holy, he's saying that for our good too.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, because I want to see you up here.
Yes.
And you can't be up here in this state.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's like we always end up in a pastoral side of it, which is cool.
It's true.
I like it. But jumping back to Og, real quick in this. So where I stopped reading that Deuteronomy 32, it said, actually, I don't know if I got to this point. But it said, in verse 11, it says, for only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. So there's a lot there.
One, because he's already been identified as an Amorite.
Yes.
But now it's also tying him to this other group.
Yeah, the Rephaim.
Yes.
So then who are the Rephaim, Paul?
That's a big question.
I know.
And it's, man, I wasn't prepared to answer that question, but I knew it would come up.
Well, I want to shout out.
Well, I think it's important to say, like, who are the recognizable Rephaim that we've seen?
There you go.
And so there's one in particular that's pretty famous.
Okay.
Amongst children's stories all across the neighborhood.
How famous is he?
Well, not as famous as the other guy who killed him. But when we look at Goliath.
Good point. Yeah.
Goliath is a Rephaim.
How? What? Because Og was the last of them.
Okay, so because he's the son of Anak, right?
Yep.
Who is a descendant of the Rephaim.
Yes.
They're connected in that way. So Goliath is attached to them because he's a descendant of that.
Right.
Yeah. So they're in that same camp. And there's something very interesting about Goliath
Yeah.
that is attached again to Og, which you're going to get into.
Am I?
Maybe. I feel like you are.
Well, I was just going to jump to Numbers 13,
Okay.
32. It says, so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out. This is Joshua and the group.
Yeah.
And you don't know where I'm going with this either, do you?
There's a couple places you could go, so I'm curious.
Well, I just want to read this last part because I want to tie in all these words together.
Okay.
So, so now we're in Numbers, which is actually before Deuteronomy, but it's talking about the children of Joshua and the other 11 spies that went in and lived for 40 days among the Canaanites in Israel in order to spy out the land and kind of see if they could. And this is the funny thing is, like, looking back on it now, it's not that they needed to go and spy out the land in order to be like, can we overtake the land? Because in some ways that's direct disobedience. The Lord said, take the land.
Yeah.
And they sent men in to spy it out, so that in some ways the Lord allowed that to happen for them to be able to see what exactly the Lord was going to deliver to them.
Yeah.
So it was like this, like, they didn't need to go and spy out the land to see if they could do it. They needed to go spy out the land to see what God was going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the misconception that they had. So when they come back, it says, so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. Real quick. So when we read that, it devours its inhabitants. So that phrase, devours its inhabitants, is a phrase that doesn't mean it makes people bad. What that means is the land devours its inhabitants is a phrase that is directly referencing men of renown that eat people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually not a speculation. That is what that is
what
referencing.
It is. Yeah.
So what it's saying is, like, there are man-eaters in this land.
Yeah.
It devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim. Wait, hang on.
What?
So they just straight up say, and there we saw the Nephilim.
Yeah.
So in Genesis 6, we see that the Nephilim were there in those days and the days after.
Yeah.
But we're to assume that the Nephilim are wiped out in the flood. Honestly, we just need to do a whole episode of what are Nephilim.
Yeah.
But the symbol of Nephilim, if you look at Genesis 6, it's the sons of God and the daughters of man. It's their offspring. Yeah. So we'll just say it like that.
To use the term again, another unholy union. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to, like, in some ways, I guess the second unholy union. Yeah. Breaking down maybe Genesis 3 in a different way. Yeah, so it says, and there we saw the Nephilim. And then this is kind of interesting. Parenthetically, it says, the sons of Anak who come from the Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Now, real quick, so this is something interesting about this, because this is kind of pointing back to who Og is. Yeah. It's tying in a little bit of these people and in this land and this space where Og is actually the ruler and the king. And it goes to, and there we saw the Nephilim. This parenthetical, so this is a Doug Van Dorn. So
nice. Yeah.
Doug Van Dorn, the pastor, written many things. But he kind of goes into this so let me say it like this. Numbers 13:33, and there we saw the Nephilim. The parenthetical phrase right after that word Nephilim is the sons of Anak who come from the Nephilim. Yeah. And then it continues. So this is not Doug Van Dorn. What is true is that parenthetical was placed there after the Torah was written.
Okay.
So Moses writing Numbers doesn't write that parenthetical.
Right.
That parenthetical, some people argue that it potentially was like a second temple. It was most likely in a first century context.
Okay.
That it was written. It's actually not even in the Septuagint.
Oh, wow.
So that parenthetical is not in the Septuagint, which is interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and the main reason why the main reason why that's interesting is because it just says, and there we saw the Nephilim. But the reason why it's important that the parenthetical is written, the sons of Anak who come from the Nephilim, is because it's clarifying that when it says Nephilim, it's not referring to, like, it wants you to know exactly who it's referring to.
Yeah.
So whoever added that parenthetical there in like probably around the first century is what a lot of people think. But definitely it's not in the Septuagint.
Yeah.
Their intent behind it was to make sure you didn't get confused who they were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they add that in. And then it says, and we seemed...
It could easily have been like, oh, pre-flood. And it's like, well, no, it's different.
Well...
but same group, but different.
Well, but also the big misconception would be sons of Seth.
Right.
So...
That's true.
So that's where the Doug Van Dorn comes in, is like, that's his speculation on why it was added.
That's fascinating.
Was in order to clarify Nephilim not referring to sons of Seth.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, which is something to unpack at a different time.
Which, again, is another big conversation to have.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's Numbers 13:30, where all of a sudden we see that there are stated by the spies that there are Nephilim in the land.
Yeah.
Which is, like, some people are like, I've never heard the word Nephilim before. It's like, all right, but it's not just in Genesis 6.
Right.
You see it here in Numbers, and this is way after.
Mm-hmm.
It's after the flood even. Yeah. And the Nephilim are the ones causing havoc.
They're doing some damage.
That create this flood moment. So it's...
Can I take an aside in here real quick?
Yes.
And so I think, because I've heard this from a few people, not everybody. Okay. Which is probably good. But when it talks about a bad report. Yeah. I think with that, I've heard people say that it means they lied about it. Sure. They lied about what they were saying. And so I think it's really important for to justify where I think you're going is like, okay, so did they lie and just say, oh yeah, there's these really like big people there, and we totally made it up. Yeah. And I think it's interesting on just the context side is no one questions whether they're lying or not. Right. They're just like, yep, cool. Yeah, yeah. But also it's like language wise, we can do better than that. Just sure. That. Sure. Yeah. Where else we see that word, which the Hebrew word escapes me right now, that's used there. But we see it in a number of other places in Scripture. One of them is with Joseph, when he returns from the fields visiting his brothers and gives his dad a report. It says he gave his dad a bad report. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, when we look at the character of Joseph, would he be the one to lie? I don't think so, because that would really undermine the entire story and how the character of Joseph that the story is painting. Sure. And then also we see a very similar description to this in Amos. Oh yeah. When it talks about the very very similar thing. Amos gets wild. Yeah, it does get wild. Those minor prophets are on something. Yeah. But so there's a couple other examples too, but I think even with that it's important to say that bad doesn't mean false, it means not good. Yeah. And we've talked about that before with false. If we're going to say that bad in this passage means false, but in other places it doesn't. Yeah. Well, now we're picking and choosing. Sure. Or we have to call everyone else a liar as well. Yes. When it's like, when they say that the spies gave a bad report, they didn't lie. They said, I don't have good news for you. Yeah. 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 Well, we've talked about that before, even with false in a different context. Yeah. Of the idea of like false gods. Right.
It's like that word in and of itself is kind of
It can be misleading.
it can be.
Yeah.
And some of that is just the way we framed it, or maybe the way that
Right.
pastors have preached it in a way that's like,
I mean, it's in the same way. It's like when we talk about what God created in Genesis.
yeah,
So many people say, "Oh, the world was perfect." It's like, no, it wasn't. It never said that.
yeah,
And so it's like the language that we use matters.
it does.
Yeah, for reasons like this, because it can give us a wrong idea of what the passage is actually saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is Numbers 21. Thus Israel lived in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Jazer. And I don't know how to say that. And they captured its villages and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up by the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against them, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. But the Lord said to Moses, do not fear him, for I have given him into your hands, and all his people and his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon. So they defeated him and his sons and all his people until he had no survivor left, and they possessed his land. You might be like, didn't you just read that? Yeah, I did, but in a different chapter.
Yeah.
In a different place in the Torah. So it's this thing of like this story is being told over and over again.
It's a big story.
It is. It's a critical story. So the thing that's interesting about Og is what we see with Og is that he is a descendant. He's an Amorite king. And he is a descendant of essentially the line of Ham, Canaanites.
Yeah.
But he's also like the land of Canaan is flooded with the remnant of the pre-flood Nephilim.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that, like, one of the sub-questions in this conversation that I have always kind of had is, okay, the children of Israel go through and they fight all these wars, and then they come into the land of Canaan, and they go, oh, we saw all these big people, and we felt like grasshoppers. Okay, cool. And then they and then they disobeyed God, and then they were in the desert for 40 years, and then they eventually came back, and they went and conquered the land. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's the story, but like, what do you mean you went in and you felt like a grasshopper? What do you mean that there were actual Nephilim in the land? I thought that those were gone.
Right.
I thought, oh wait, but it does say they were in the land then, and then in the days after.
Yeah.
So like, these are the days after. Like this is in Genesis 6 when it says these are the days after, these are the days after they're talking about.
And we know it's pretty far after because we're talking about well-established cities.
Well, when God talks to Abraham, he says in 400 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Abraham's pretty long after Noah. Yeah. So
even then there's established cities and civilizations.
Yeah. So you're talking about hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So the Nephilim in the land of Canaan have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years post-flood.
Yeah.
So what does the land of Canaan look like? And also, like, I'm interested in the fruit that they brought back.
Oh, man. I want to know what kind of fruit it was.
Yeah. And if Nephilim are known to, like, be man-eaters, why did they do that? They had awesome fruit. Land flowing with milk and honey.
Not enough.
Come on. But that's the point, though.
Yeah.
It isn't enough because...
They want more.
Yeah, because what they're desiring is not what the land produces, right?
Right.
So there's all this stuff happening. So then you kind of go like, all right, well, is there any description of Og? Well, I'm glad that you asked, Stephen.
Good work, Stephen.
Yeah, so I actually stopped before, but Deuteronomy 3, it says, where I stopped was verse 11, for only Og, the king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. And then in that same parenthetical, it says, behold, his bed was a bed of iron. Is it not in Rebah of the Ammonites? 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits its breadth, according to the common cubit. when we took possession of the land at the time, I gave to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the territory beginning at Aor, which is the on the edge of the valley of Arnon, and the hill and half the hill country of Gilead with its cities, the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, that is all the region of Argob. I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh. All that portion of Bashan is called the land of Rephaim. So all the portion of Bashan is called the land of Rephaim. So real quick, let's get into this etymology real fast.
Yeah.
Bashan. Bashan is, it's a derivation. I'm going to say this because I wrote this down. It's a derivation of the Semitic word for the serpent.
Really?
So yeah, so it's a derivation of the Semitic word for the serpent. So Bashan literally means the settlement of the serpent.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And right here in Deuteronomy 3, verse 13, it says all that portion of Bashan is called the land of Rephaim.
Yeah.
So that parallel of
that's
settlement of the serpent, the land of the Rephaim. It was this space that was actually at the base of Mount Hermon as well.
I was about to say that.
Yes.
The Amorite, sorry, not
Yeah.
Ammonite.
Yeah,
Amorite. That would mean like mountain dweller.
Yeah.
Or like people that dwell in the mountains.
Yeah.
And most likely Og would have ruled at the base or from Mount Hermon.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's these massive monuments. There's actually circles of walls that are built up in Bashan that are this massive structure built out of basalt, which is volcanic rock.
Yeah.
And it's built up in this spiral shape that if you look at it from above, just resembles a serpent.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And essentially was like this altar space that you can still see it. Like it's still there. But it's built up of this volcanic space or volcanic rock. Yeah. So I wanted to get to the end of that. And then let's spend just a minute going, why did it talk about his bed?
Yeah. And for the two people out there probably that have this translation, there are some that translate that as like sarcophagus or coffin.
Yeah.
But most likely, especially how we see that word in other places, it's talking about like a couch or a bed.
True.
Especially because it's made out of iron.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a coffin.
Yeah.
So it's like
we have so many there's so many other episodes within this episode. We're trying to just stay on Og.
Yeah, because even when you asked me about the Rephaim, I'm like, there's so many places we could go.
I know. We need to do a whole episode.
Especially
just
a
on
lot
the
of places, how often the Bible talks about it, but you don't necessarily know it's talking about it unless you go into the Hebrew root of these words.
Well, and let me say this too. Like, so we started out by saying, like, who is Og? Well, he's mentioned 22 times in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. And I think when we get into conversations like this, a lot of people would call this fringe theology.
Right.
But how does that make sense? It's a guy that's mentioned 22 times in the Bible. You're talking about Rephaim that's mentioned so many times in the Bible. We're looking at these really critical things, and it's called fringe theology. I don't understand how that... Like, I get the speculative elements of it. I understand that.
Yeah.
And there's a piece to that. And that's fun to, like, speculate and have conversations about. I feel like we're trying to sit on like, well, what does the Bible actually say?
Right.
Where does it say all of these things? What is it actually talking about? That stuff's not speculative.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's not fringe.
Right.
Why it's fringe is because no one's talking about it. And it's like, why is no one talking about...
the Bible actually says those things.
I know.
And I think that's, like you just said, that's kind of where we're sitting. It's like, before we jump into the actual fringe theology, more speculation, let's look at, well, what does it actually just say?
Right.
And everything that we've said so far is like, this is just what it says.
Yeah. That's literally, and it says it, we've read it in multiple different ways.
Him. This is what it said he did.
Yeah.
This is who he's associated with.
Yeah. So let's
None of that is speculation. It's in the hard text.
Yeah, exactly. So then we see this idea. Okay.
Again, I just think that's so important to emphasize.
Yeah.
When it's like, we're not making this up. You can pull up all these verses yourself.
Yeah.
And I hope you do.
Yeah, exactly. So, real quick, and then we'll wrap this part up.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just want to read this bed portion.
Let's talk about this man's bed.
It says, "Behold, his bed was a bed of iron. Is it not in Rabbah of the Ammonites? 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits its breadth, according to the common cubit." So it's just interesting that it mentions that at all. And you're like, okay. And there's all this speculation of like Og's bed and like what happened on Og's bed. And you're like, all right, well, what is the what's going on here? So
yeah.
So I wanted to read this. So King Og's bed, an iron bed, which is allegedly still to be seen in Ammon, poses a permanent problem for the commentators and other scholars dealing with Deuteronomy 3:11. Since the beginnings of historical critical scholarship, the most widespread proposal for its solution has been the examination that, in fact, Og's iron bed was a sarcophagus of basalt. So, being that, like, that serpent monument in the middle of that is where Og's bed is, which is so essentially what I'm reading is a scholarly work with tons of footnotes, basically saying that for the most part, most people agree and have agreed for a long time that Og's bed is actually his tomb. It's his burial place. It's his sarcophagus.
Which is interesting.
It is.
Because kind of what I was saying earlier, because I read in other places like, no, it was actually just a bed.
Right.
On how the Bible describes it.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially because what's interesting about that is because tombs and sarcophagus were mostly stone and marble.
Yeah.
But this one, it says it's made out of iron.
Right. So this says another somewhat less popular view, which was first established by P. Carg in 1917, so 100 years ago, claims that Og's bed was a prehistoric dolmen, one of the megalithic tombs which are typical of the Jordanian area. An increasing number of modern commentators, however, have become uncertain and are not able to decide what is meant by the iron bed, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or they are searching for new explanations. To those who reject the traditional solutions, which would be that it's a sarcophagus, for instance, the authors of 3 recent commentaries on the book of Deuteronomy, which includes several people, they all are of the opinion that Og's bed was nothing else but a real bedstead, which was decorated with iron. So that kind of leans back into that. Yeah. So basically, what this article is saying is that a lot of people's solution was that it was a sarcophagus. But there's a lot more commentators that are looking at it and resolving to, well, if it's an iron bed, then it most likely is his bed.
Yeah.
Which, before we get to that, I want to wrap this up, and then we can jump back to the bed to jump to something that's coming. So one of the things, so then who is Og? Let's just take this kind of simple.
Yeah.
If we look at who is Og and why it's important that we know who Og is, Og is essentially the king of the Ammonites when the children of Israel are making their way back into the promised land that was promised to Abram while he was standing in the promised land, and God made the covenant with him that his, in 4 generations, in 400 years, that his children, his offspring, would come back and inhabit this land. And that king was in the way of that promise. But before he was in the way of that promise, he was part of a corrupted bloodline that goes back to the iniquity of Ham and his sin post-flood, being part of the only righteous family seen on earth, Noah's family, that was spared in the bringing up of the waters of Sheol, bringing back up the flood waters and the waters and the chaos and the Leviathan from the beginning, pulling that all back up, creating moments of chaos again where the world starts to lose its shape and becomes a little bit void again, and then pushes back down and creates this reset. And why that happened was because of the iniquity on the sons of God laying with the daughters of man and creating Nephilim in the land, who created chaos in the land and corrupted the bloodlines of those children of Adam and Eve who were supposed to steward and multiply in the land. And so Og is this final remnant that we see of this whole line and this whole storyline that God tried to wipe out with the flood. He did that, but then it was corrupted again, almost in the same way, with this unholy, what did you call it?
Union.
This unholy union. Is that David Bowie? This unholy union and white wedding. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's what it is.
This unholy union that continues this corruption of what was let in the garden, which was this unholy movement of the serpent and the devil and his angels, as Jesus would say, that this is happening, and Og is the final remnant of that, and the Canaanites in the land, with Nephilim actually still in the land of Canaan.
Yeah.
All of this needs to be wiped out the same way it needed to be wiped out when the flood came.
Mm-hmm.
All of this stuff. So Israel is enacting the judgment of God that started back at Genesis 6,
Yeah.
which happens because of what happens in Genesis 3. And all of this stuff is all tying in together. So Og is this figurehead of the final remnant of Ham, the final remnant of the Nephilim. He's that final remnant. And then we see one last ditch effort a little bit later with the psalmist himself, King David, who references Og himself.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, it's this through line where they keep trying to cut at the solution of the pure bloodline of humanity and what God intended to be on the earth, that eventually Jesus would show up and do what we couldn't do. And in that, over and over again, you see this remnant of the Nephilim, this remnant of the sons of God corrupting the daughters of man on the earth, and corrupting, as Enoch 1 would speculate, maybe say it that way, of knowledge given that we weren't supposed to have, which is reminiscent of Genesis 3 and the knowledge potentially that we get from the tree, and the knowledge of good and evil, and all of that stuff playing out together. And you see that like this remnant of the Nephilim are just trying to pick off the children of God and keep them out and keep them impure as much as they can.
In a way of usurping authority.
Yes.
Because, I mean, we've talked about this before, it's like when we look at who was given authority of the earth, well, it was humans.
Yeah.
And then we gave that authority over.
Yes. Yeah, so you look at Og and you go, who is Og? Well, Og is the final remnant, the final king to be slain, because Goliath later on is not a king.
Mm-mm.
He's a warrior, and he's still of the remnant of the Nephilim, but he's not a king.
Mm-mm.
And that's a different distinction.
Yeah.
So Og is the last remnant of the Nephilim, who is a king over a massive region that is at the foot of Mount Hermon, which is a whole other has other significance pointing back to Genesis 6, and potentially to Eden, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. But we do see, like, as it goes down, it's like there's that dilution.
Yes.
Which is where we come to Goliath. He's a diluted form of what Og represents.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool too because you even see like in the psalmist I think I read from 136, you see the defeating of Og and was it Sion?
Yeah.
And you see that, but in Psalm 133, it talks about the dew on Hermon, the dew on Mount Hermon, and then even the anointing oil on Aaron's beard. And it's this redemption of Mount Hermon, which is a place of pagan worship for a long time. And it's this redemption of that. And then 136, he kind of calls back to the remnant that was there that continued the corruption of Hermon and that space. It's all tied in. It's all like everything is intentionally there for a reason. Yeah. So you go, who is Og? Og is the final, he's the final Nephilim king.
Yeah.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
It's pretty wild to think about.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like these are the dots that the Bible puts together for us.
Yeah, it does it all for us.
Yeah.
So Og's bed. Og's bed. There's speculation on that. But
yeah, there's a lot on that.
Yeah. So I think we're going to try something in this episode.
Do we snap into this?
We're going to have to.
Yeah.
So, all right. This should be episode 12, I believe. And this is the first time we're doing this.
Yeah.
So let us know if you want us to do this. Also,
we've kind of teased this on a previous episode.
We did. And then we've teased it through this episode.
Yes.
And this might be a slightly longer episode, but we'll keep this next segment short.
Yeah.
As a teaser.
He doesn't deserve a lot of time.
No. And if you made it this far, you deserve it.
Have a triple portion.
And potentially don't want it. But we're about to do, for the first time, a new segment. And this new segment, we want to hear your feedback if you want us to do this segment. Well, I think that we will intentionally keep this segment short, even in the future, just because it's a fun 100% speculative.
And there's no resolution.
There's no resolution.
It's just, here it is. What do you think?
Yeah.
It's all, can I just say what it's called? Or should we save that?
We will after we snap.
Okay, we'll save it for the snap. We'll save it for the snap.
So if you're not staying for this, this is the after party. If we had a Patreon, maybe this would be the Patreon.
That could be fun.
So let us know.
Free content.
Let us know. Yeah. So new first time segment for Martyr's Row. Stay tuned.
Take one.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to
Conspiracy
Corner. Uh-oh, Paul.
Welcome to the Conspiracy Zone.
Conspiracy Corner.
You know what's, I think it's funny because we emphasized in the main segment how much like we're focused on like what does the Bible say? And now we're giving you a fair warning.
Well, think about like youth camp.
Yeah.
Like youth camp, you're like, all right, there's very serious, like very reverent. You're fully focused on the Lord. And then there's like the after party hangout where people are like throwing Jell-O in your face.
Yeah.
Or you're like bobbing for apples and beans.
Yeah.
And you're like, what are we doing? Well, we were just doing something else.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is.
We're at the part of the sleepover where it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, I can't go to sleep yet.
Yeah.
So what do you think about?
What do you think about? Do you think that?
Yeah.
What if?
Don't think I'm weird for asking this.
Yeah. So this is the no judgment side. I feel like some of you have probably just been waiting for this.
Probably.
And then others of you are like,
and they're like,
I'm
just getting the Bible.
And then others of you are going to be like, oh, well, now they're talking about this stuff. That now I can't believe anything that they're saying. Humans are more complex than that. Come on.
We're very complex creatures.
Yeah. So did you say preachers or creatures?
Probably both. Complex creatures.
All right, let's jump right into it.
That'll be the... Yeah. Conspiracy
Corner.
I have a question for you.
Oh, no. I promise I didn't write this one.
Have you ever watched a movie before?
Yeah.
From Paramount?
I have.
What does their logo look like? Could you describe it from memory?
Is Paramount the one that has the stars that go over the mountain?
It does, yeah.
It's like there's like a trail of stars that go up over the mountain.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and then
You
Paramount.
did it.
Actually, yeah.
So it's funny because someone asked me that and I was like, what does it look like? I completely forgot. And then it all came back and I was like, oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
Paramount Pictures.
Okay.
It's been around for a while.
It has, yeah.
Early 1900s.
That makes sense.
And so
The golden age.
The golden age. Yeah.
That's something else.
Actually, another conspiracy corner.
That's true.
Well, so one of the founders.
I love that you have a notepad right now for this.
Actually, I feel like I need crazy hair.
I know.
So check this out. I should get some
We need
yarn.
a desk.
We
Yeah.
should get some yarn.
And just pin it across the. We could do that for real.
That would actually be kind of fun.
Yeah. All right. What?
So one of the founders of Paramount Pictures
Okay.
was William Wadsworth Hodgkinson,
What a name.
or W.W. That's when they could name their kids back in the day.
Yeah, that's true.
And he was also the inventor of the logo. He designed the logo.
Okay.
And so as the story goes, he was out with some of his partners at some
As you do.
restaurant, and he just kind of jotted it down on a napkin.
Okay.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah. Why is everything on a napkin back then?
Yeah. Like, I came with this brilliant idea, wrote it down on a napkin.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, I guess they didn't have a notepad at dinner,
Yeah, they're not just hanging out with these.
and they don't have phones, so like.
I think it's just funny. It's become a cliche
Yeah.
because it's just a story now.
Yeah, but a cliche usually is based in truth.
Yeah, it's probably because this really happened.
Yeah, of course.
No, they say as the legend goes, but
Okay.
whatever.
As the legend goes.
As the legend goes. And so he designed this pyramid-shaped mountain peak capped by snow with 29 stars.
Oh, I was actually going to ask you, okay, Paul,
Yeah.
what do the stars mean?
Well, so it's interesting. There's a couple things that are going on
I like that
here.
you say pyramid-shaped mountain.
You like that? Well, so our boy WW here. One more away from
What was his last name?
Hodgkinson.
WWH?
WOH. Well, so he's a Utah boy.
Okay.
And so it's believed, and this is what a lot of people say, the mountain and what he designed was based off of Ben Lomond, which is one of the mountain ranges there. One of the
Okay.
mountains.
I was like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, some guy. So that's where, and actually you'll even see that in a lot of people, they even claim that today. That's like, oh, that's what that mountain range is based off of, that peak.
Okay. Does it look anything
even
like
though
it?
It doesn't now, because there's been several redesigns, which we'll get into.
That makes sense.
And so now it looks like it's more likely based off of a mountain in Peru,
Okay.
which actually could also be kind of interesting. In a whole
Yeah, you
separate
jump from
site.
Utah to Peru. That's
Yeah, different mountain, but even then, it's kind of like maybe.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. There's a guy on Reddit talking about this, and he's like, "I dare you to find me a picture of Ben Lomond that looks like the Paramount logo today."
Well, also like why?
He like posted a map. He's like, "I dare you. I'll pay you all the money I have." I was like, this guy's pretty serious about this.
But also like, why does it need to look like that?
Yeah, and he just drew it, and it's
Yeah.
been like that since he drew it.
That's wild.
So they've had a few redesigns of the classic logo,
Okay.
and the original one, I think it was just a crown that said Paramount Pictures over top of it.
Gotcha.
And then he drew this, and it's been that way since the early 1900s. I think 1914
Wow.
to today.
Yeah.
It's been the same thing with slightly some adjustments.
So that's literally 100 years.
Yeah,
Oh wait, no. 110.
almost 110. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so some of the partners bought out Hodgkinson, and they changed the stars, the count, to 24.
But not the mountain. Okay.
The mountain stayed the same. They changed it to 24.
And it was originally 29.
Originally 29.
Okay, so they took 5.
Yeah, they took 5 away. And this time they said it was to symbolize the contracted movie stars they had. And so their plan was every time they would sign on a new movie star,
They'd add a
they would
star.
add a star.
That's kind of cute.
So it's kind of cool, right? It's kind of cute. Well, yeah, and that's around that time is when the mountain inspo changed to Mount Artisan Raju?
No, I don't know.
Some mountain.
Okay.
Probably it's an H sound because it's Peru.
Okay.
But then in 1966, there's another redesign that changed the stars to 22.
We just keep going down.
Keep going down. But this time, you may ask, like, okay, well, you had 24, so 22, is that how many movie stars you have now? And some people would
that's
say
7,
yes.
So down 7.
But according to them, they say, no, now they're just stars.
Weird.
And it's like,
Why make that decision?
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Just leave
Well,
at 25.
You'd think, right?
I would.
And then in 1986, they had a guy commission a painting. They commissioned a painting from this dude,
Okay.
Dario Campanile. I wrote this a few days. Campanile. And he updated it
Obviously Italian.
for the 75th anniversary.
Okay.
Yes.
So this would be 89? 1914
Yes.
plus 75.
Oh, because we're in... Oh, yes. Well, so we're in 1986 right now.
Okay, I was not close.
No.
I was going to say close. I mean, I'm like 3 off. But.
And so with this, that's when we start to see, especially even moving into today, we have some of the animation.
Okay, yeah.
And what's interesting is because they added water in front of the mountain. And what we see today is we see those stars kind of hovering over the water and then encircling the mountain.
That's what Disney does too.
Oh, yeah, with the castle?
Yeah, it goes over the water.
That's right.
And then it comes up.
Yeah, which looks magical, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, there's a conspiracy going on around here.
Okay.
Which is what I'm getting to.
Around these parts?
Around these parts. And there are people and there are people that say that the 22 stars is reference to the Book of Enoch.
Oh, interesting.
And it refers to the 22 watchers that were named that descended upon Mount Hermon,
which is the
which
mountain.
some even say that pyramid-shaped peak is one representative of the mount, which Mount Hermon doesn't look like that.
Right.
But they're saying that's what it's representing in that mountain peak. You could even say goes back to like Nimrod, with the ziggurat that he built.
Yeah.
Is the tower leading up to the mountain peak to, do some wild stuff.
Yeah, because that's what a ziggurat is. It's a man-made mountain.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now there's some problems.
Okay.
With this conspiracy theory that they present.
Yeah, that's a. It's weird to me to jump from. That's a weird number to change the stars to. It's the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, well, it's like it's interesting because there is a lot of symbolism that makes it compelling.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people, even non-Christians, that will see that and they're like, "Yeah, it's actually kind of an interesting theory if you believe it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, so you're not even denying it." And there are some interesting things going on around here. I mean, even when you look at like Nickelodeon.
Okay.
So, because there's been what was the name of that show that just came out? Quiet on Set or something, I think it was called. We're kind of exposed Dan Schneider.
Oh yeah.
And so Nickelodeon was acquired in 1990 by Paramount.
Okay.
And Dan Schneider started his career there in 93. So it's like, oh, there's a lot of weird stuff that happened around this time.
Yeah.
But like Hollywood in general is just kind of weird.
True.
But anyway, going back.
Probably for the same reason.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one thing to say if this conspiracy theory is right.
Yeah.
That it didn't start out this way, but there may have been some kind of influence that was placed. Even the fact that it's like, if he drew this down on a napkin, that inspiration just kind of hit him in a moment is what it signifies.
Sure.
And so, yeah, there could have been some outside influence that was pushing him in this direction.
Yeah.
But
he had a different number of stars.
Yeah, which me personally, I think it's like he just had an idea.
Yeah.
And it kind of turned into this thing that it is now.
Sure.
But going back to what I was saying, there's a problem.
Okay.
And these 22 watchers that they're claiming were named in the Book of Enoch.
Okay.
Well, there aren't 22.
I was going to say.
there's only 20 that are named.
Okay.
And so you'd think, okay, that alone is just like, it's just a lot of coincidences.
Yeah.
And there's really not much to it. Well, it gets a little bit more interesting than that,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Tell us, Paul.
So there are different manuscripts for the Book of Enoch,
Yes.
and they contain variations in the list of names.
Oh.
And so
I didn't consider that.
it's interesting. And,
Yeah.
and that's even what's difficult. Even a lot of the, like the translation that I have, there are like things in parentheses and stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't actually know because this part was corrupted.
Whoa.
So they're like,
I think I know where you're going with this.
yeah. And so they're like, we actually don't know. Like, we assume this is part of it. It makes sense that this would be in here. Even so, when it gives the list of names, it says like, oh, here's the leader, then the 20th down from him. It goes in that order.
Yeah.
And then in the last line of that, this is in chapter 6 of the Book of Enoch,
Okay.
the first Enoch, it says, and these were their chiefs of tens. But they actually don't know if that's what it actually says.
Okay.
And because so there's other translations say, and these were their leaders, or this was the leaders. These were the leaders of the 200.
Gotcha.
Because we know there were 200 total,
Right.
but there's only 20 that are named, based
Okay.
on the most popular manuscripts right now.
So leaders of 10, groups of 10.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, so we have like the Book of Jubilees, Second Enoch, and medieval demonology works. Sometimes add or conflate the names of the Watchers, giving rise to there maybe being more.
Okay.
And this is the part
okay.
that gets interesting for me.
Yeah.
Where, so the people out on TikTok and stuff that are saying, oh, there's 22, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the Book of Enoch, it doesn't show that there are 22. It shows that there are 20.
Right.
But because of these other works, like Jubilees, Second Enoch, and medieval demonology work, which
Okay.
they spent a lot of time on demonology in that time.
They did. Yeah.
They were kind of obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Um,
We should get into that. Like medieval, like that era for theology was like really.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're coming off of the early church and all the works that they came out with.
Yeah, which is more praxis.
Yeah.
And then you get into like categorizing the unseen realm,
Yes.
which goes back to the very beginning of our episode.
It's true. That's true.
Yeah.
It all ties together.
Yeah, because
Like
they
we're
wrote a
podcasters.
lot on demons and angels.
Yeah.
So heavenly beings. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our ideas came from them and their artistic works.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the way we imagine everything is
Mhm.
from medieval times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so with that being said, and this is where I think it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
So the number 22
Yeah.
is a significant number in ancient Jewish mysticism.
Okay.
So 22, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet.
And keep in mind, the original guy was definitely Jewish.
Yeah.
You're talking about early Hollywood.
Yeah.
So
Which actually, even that is interesting.
yeah.
And it kind of shows just, and it's not me like being weird about anything, but it's like,
I mean, we're already talking about.
yeah, true. We're already being weird. But it's like when you look at Hollywood, that was considered like a dirty job.
Yeah.
And so with the perspective at that time on Jewish people,
Yeah.
they got the dirty job, which was like Wall Street and Hollywood,
Sure.
because no one else wanted to do it. They're like,
Right.
that's like being a garbage man.
Yeah.
And so they took it and they made it successful,
Yeah.
which is fascinating
It
in and of
is.
itself. Yeah. Well, so yeah, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. In the Book of Formation, which is a Jewish mystic book,
Okay.
creation is said to have been accomplished through these 22 letters, as they represent the fundamental elements of divine speech. Kabbalistic teachings
Mm.
say the tree of life has 22 paths corresponding to the 22 letters, linking the spiritual and the material worlds. And 22 may represent a complete list of names, knowledge, or cosmic forces.
Mm.
And so that number 22 in mysticism would have been used to show significance.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's what makes this conspiracy a little bit more interesting. Because people are coming out and saying like, oh, there are 22 listed. It's like, well, no, there's not. But it's still interesting.
Yeah.
And it could still point to that in a very roundabout way,
Sure.
in a mystic way.
Yeah, but what about the 29?
Yeah, and that there's we don't know why he did it.
Huh.
Yeah.
I wonder where 29 comes from.
And because it's a very interesting number.
It is.
And so for me, it's like early on, I don't think, and I think that's the issue that this conspiracy can fall into, and people look at it like, oh, that was the plan from the beginning. It's like, I don't think so. I think when we look at, going back to like Ezekiel, it's like the king of Tyre and the prince of Tyre. It's like, I think there might have been some influence.
Sure.
But then his human side of it kind of took over.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I have this idea, this muse that spoke to me.
Yeah.
And so I came up with this idea, and then he kind of added his own flair to it.
That makes sense.
Or it broke down in translation.
Maybe he was 29.
Maybe. I think it's a good number. But then we see, like, over time, there are things in, like, the animation of the logo and what happens that is very, very appropriate to what the conspiracy is saying that they're showing. Yeah, the speculation.
That makes sense.
Is that, like, even for it to hover over the water in the beginning of the animation seems to point back to Genesis, where we see the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the deep.
A Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for them to circle the mountain, which is shaped like a pyramid.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, when we look at Enoch, it says the watchers descended upon Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
And it's like when we see
so they came up from the water.
From the water, from the chaos.
Yes.
Circled the mountain.
Yeah.
And it's like that was their way of descending down.
Huh.
So it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's it.
So what are your final thoughts?
So my final thoughts are it's inconclusive.
Okay.
It's like I think that there is something fascinating about it.
Sure.
And especially when we talk about just Hollywood in general, which they represent. I mean, some of these guys are even listed as like the fathers of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because they're the originators. Like they created.
Yeah, that's true.
Even the way it runs, they're the ones who started that idea of running it in this certain way. And so this birth that came from them, it wouldn't surprise me if they were connected to the Watchers in some way.
That makes sense. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, it's funny, I think we need to be careful how we talk about it.
Yeah.
In like, let's make sure we know what we're talking about. We can't say like, my biggest criticism on this conspiracy is people are saying there were 22 Watchers when it's like, no, there weren't.
Right. Yeah,
they didn't
actually.
name 22.
Yeah.
They named 20.
Yeah. That's wild.
But 22 is still significant.
Yeah.
For a different reason.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun to play around with it.
And that's what this whole thing was.
Yeah.
It was an interesting thing that I saw and I heard, and I was like, let's dive into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And see what it has.
Yeah, and I like keeping this light.
Yeah.
Because, like, we could talk about it for another 30 minutes. But it's fun to just go, here's a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's a corner.
That's it.
It's not a room.
Mm-mm. And it, like I said in the beginning, it doesn't deserve a lot of time.
True.
I think it's fun to talk about, and it's like, well, if anything, it's like, let's kind of guide it a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's what I found from when I looked into it.
Yeah.
Is like, someone said, again, saying this, like, someone said 22. Well, let me check that out.
Yeah.
Because I can be like everyone else and just create the same video.
Right, all right.
And say, yeah, it says 22. It's like, well, for me, it's like when I heard that, it's like, okay, show me the reference.
Yeah, what does it actually say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no one's referencing it. Everyone's just saying it.
Yeah.
Which means one guy just made it up.
Yeah, so then it drives you to study.
Yeah.
That's cool, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I actually do like about conspiracy theories. Is like it's playful. It lets you like play around with stuff. But then it should drive you to go, well, what is actually true?
Yeah.
Like, what do we have information on?
Yeah.
And then which part of it is speculation?
And that's the important thing to look at.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's nothing conclusive in this.
Right.
It's fun to talk about still.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, let's try to add some order to the chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, so let us know if you want us to dig deep on something.
And what are your thoughts? Do the people at Paramount, do they worship Satan?
If you think yes, just comment yes. Nothing else, just yes.
Yes.
If you think no, then comment no. I hope that this video is just full of just yes or no.
It'd be so awesome.
People would be like, when they start the video, they'll be like, "Why is the comment section
just yes,
yes, no?" That would be the most interesting way
then
to
we should
come
run
to
a
a video
poll to see like what people agree with.
and just say yes or no.
Yeah.
I'm here for that.
Incredible.
Yeah. So let us know, yes or no. 3, 2, 1.
If I can play it right.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. And we're back. We've never done this before. It's nice to see you again. I wish I had a sweater to take off. There's something about looking over your shoulder that...
I have nothing to say. I'm just enjoying this moment.
Paul's also watching the show.
I am.
And if you're just listening, you should definitely watch. Hey, lucky for you, Paul figured out how to get us on Spotify.
Woo!
With the video. So
you can watch.
If you're just listening, take a second and now look at it. And hey, nice to see you.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
Good to
Welcome.
see you too.
If this is your first time, if you've listened to all of our episodes, God bless you.
You're a real one.
And if you've never seen us before, having listened to all the episodes up to this point, sorry to disappoint you.
The shirt makes me look bigger.
That's awesome. It looks great, Paul.
Thanks.
Oh, we said we weren't
I love
going
how
to
they
do
don't
this.
actually know what I meant when I said that.
Yeah.
It's great.
We said we weren't going to do this.
I know, that's why I was laughing.
It feels too good to not do it.
I feel like I'm watching you record like a bedroom.
I know.
Like
Welcome
a live,
to the bedroom.
like a bedroom live show.
Welcome to the bedroom. Okay, how about we can just put this on the end of the episode?
Okay, sweet.
Just cut this and put it on the end. Yeah.
I'll do it.
And then you can clip it back into us doing the song, so we can have a little play out.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun.
So let's try this one again.
Okay.
For those of you who stayed all the way to the end,
God bless.
another God bless you.
You will be double blessed.
Yeah.
A double portion.
And let your moms know that you love them. Your dads too.
Yeah, let everybody know. Except for, don't let everybody know that.
I mean, it can't hurt.
Just be careful how you say it.
Yeah, true. Until next time.
Yeah. You want a 3, 2, 1 them?
Sure.
Okay. Your name was Jude. Your brother was James. You gave your life in the name of our Lord, who died for us in our sin. But you wrote about how he lived and he died, but he rose again. Your name was Jude, your brother was James, and you gave your life of our Lord, who died for us and our sin. But you wrote about he lived and he died, but he rose again. Da 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 da, da 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 da, Da 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 da.